Fallout Equestria, Chapter 41 Towards Hope. For many of us the road is a difficult one, but the path is always there for us to follow, no matter how many times we may fall. Madness. I stood there, the streamlet flowing behind absolutely everything washing over my hooves, and stared at Calamity, my jaw unhinged. There was simply no other word. Calamity's plan was insane. Hell, it wasn't even a plan. Plan stuff. Calamity had a bunch of ideas and vague hopes, tied together by multiple points of, and then something happens. We didn't have who or what we needed to even try it. I doubted we could get them. "Well?" he asked, earnestly seeking my approval. "I'm beginning to agree with Velvet Remedy," I told him, recalling her reaction to his actions in the Zebratown police headquarters.
"So, you're willing to give it a try?"
God damn it. Calamity was staring at me with the eyes of a fool, hoping for my acceptance, my support of this madness. This plan, it was something he needed to try. Needed like a starving pony needs food. I manufactured a smile. "I don't have a better plan," I admitted. "Sure." We were all going to die. Watcher Spratbot bobbed in the rain beside us, silently listening. Finally the mechanical voice that disguised Spike plaintively asked,
"Is there anything I can do, guys? I'm really sorry."
I thumped my rain-soaked forehead with an even wetter hoof. Sink, you silly mare." "Yes," I asserted, looking sidelong at Spritebot. "Yes, there is."
"What?"
Spike asked. I waved a hoof. "Just wait there for a moment. First I need to talk to God." "What I don't understand," I told Calamity as we started to walk back toward the front of absolutely everything, "is why the Wonderbolts haven't already hit us. The Wonderbolts are fast, right?" Calamity looked askance.
"Fast? You could say that, yes."
Lightning flashed across the sky. "Shouldn't they have gotten to Ironshot already?" I reckoned, talking above the rumbling thunder. "It wouldn't take long to get my tag." Not if lens flare was as skilled as it sounded. And Neopalooza was an awfully short flight from Ironshot firearms.
"They're probably caught up in Cometa,"
Calamity snarked wearily. I halted, my hoofs growing muddy, and gave Calamity a confused look. Surely he wasn't saying that they had to, file a hunting plan? Were all the ponies in the sky crazy? Calamity turned the corner, almost knocking over Railride. I heard the two stallions mumble apologies as I caught up. Railride was standing under the eave of Ditsy-Doo's store, apparently waiting for some pony. At the sight of me he nodded, then cast a furtive glance towards the lights along the city wall. Last I had seen Railride he was escorting away several ponies who had dared to come below the Enclave's cloud cover. "Where are the new Pegasi?" I asked the sheriff/mayor, wondering just how much I'd slept through. Railride glanced at Calamity before answering.
"I've put them to work assisting the community. In return they have a place in the common house so they can better situate themselves."
I looked to Calamity questioningly. My Pegasus friend frowned, his tone sour as he informed me.
"Enclave Radio broadcast an offer of aid to misplaced citizens. Traeger accepted their offer on face value and flew off, promising to contact Frost on her pip-buck soon as he was gassed. That was over 6 hours ago. Calamity was worming some sense into the two mares when that broadcast came on,"
Railride added.
"That mare was a pip-buck is some kind of ex-military, I think. Something about that broadcast spooked her proper."
I found myself feeling distinctly worried for Tracker.
"What brings you to Ditsy's port, Sheriff?"
Calamity asked, trying to sound casual. Railride shook his head at the Pegasus' suspicion. I tried to remember that Railride and Calamity had known each other for years. Their relationship had always been cordial, if not downright friendly, before balefire bombs and rogue Pegasi got thrown into the mix.
"Getting a weather report from the Grimfeathers,"
Railride told him.
"Thunderstorm spreads from the shores of Bucklin all the way to the Edge of Hope. Storms cleansing the air of the smoke from Everfree, and there's nasty rain out all over Splendid Valley." 'Cause the place needs to be more toxic.
Calamity snickered.
Just our luck that the broken weather of Everfree's keeping the storm out,
Railright added.
It's almost like that place wants to be on fire.
Hope? I asked Calamity.
Oh, yup,
Calamity agreed. Then, seeing my confusion,
I've been there before, little pup. The rebel that used to be Hope is only about a few hours down the tracks. The town was that old weapons factory,
Railright clarified. Iron-shot firearms. I remembered walking through the playground of Hope. I'd seen my first Ministry of Morale poster there. I just hadn't known the town's name.
And I got the array few miles back from it, towards Everfree.
The what now? I asked, confused. Array?
Hope solar array,
Calamity told me, sounding a little bored.
Big bunch of dishes pointed at the clouds. Best I can gather, the pony of the old world tried all sorts of crazy ways to get power when the coal supply got strangled.
Now that I didn't see. Granted, the only time I'd been up high enough to have glimpsed it out of a factory window, I was a bit busy outrunning collapsing catwalks. I paused to process this. Technology for turning sunlight into energy? Made sense considering Twilight Sparkle's ministry had even been working on weaponizing sunlight. And the Celestia 1 or Celestia Prime or whatever they're calling it can't be even used unless it's sunny. I can't tell the princess that the only defense we have against those missiles can be defeated by a cloudy day. What if the zebras decide to attack us at night? Clearly, there were still bugs to be worked out. But even the hope of power for the wasteland was just one more reason Equestria deserved and needed to see the sun. Old generators and spark batteries weren't going to last forever. Calamity was reaching his hoof towards the door when it swung open, Regina Grimfeathers framed in the doorway. My friend backed up as the griffin pushed her way out, nodding to all of us. The gun-toting adolescent griffin leaned against the wall where Ditsy's sign had been and pulled out a pack of cigarettes. Absolutely everything's porch was getting crowded. "Any of you see bears that little unicorn ran off too?" Raggy asked casually as she lit up a cigarette. Since I was standing right there, I assumed the little unicorn she was talking about was Silverbell. Calamity had come to the same conclusion.
Silverbell's missing.
She'd been inside just minutes ago. Railright bit his lower lip.
I think I saw her headed up to the toilets.
Oh. Let's not form a search party then. I was mentally glaring daggers at Watcher as I added, "Give her some privacy." Coming swiftly on the hoofs of that thought, the realization that Neopalooza had public bathrooms struck me across the forehead like a nailboard. Ow! Damn it! Of course they did. What had I been thinking?
Now what to blushing about, little pup?
Oh, thank you, Calamity. Couldn't let that go unasked, could you? Nope. You were, saying about committees? Calamity mercifully took the hint, jumping back onto the former topic like he had never left it.
Remember I told you about the Enclave keeps Pegasi who can do the sonic rainbow real close? Well, now you can see why. With all the cloud tech the Enclave relies on, not to mention the cloud curtain, they view the sonic rainbow as a weapon of mass destruction.
I looked towards where one of the raptors had come down on the town. Work lights had been set up, illuminating it through the pouring rain. The silhouettes of ponies moved about it in the downpour, scavenging.
You gotta realize, little Pip, is that when the Pegasi crossed the sky, we'd lost one city. Just one. Granted, Cloudsdale was the biggest, but that still left several more that survived pretty much untouched by the war. All that pre-war technology and magic, they've been repurposing and recycling all that stuff for centuries.
Lightning split the sky. Thunder pounded down on us like it was trying to drive us into the mud.
But they can't make more,
Calamity shouted.
Pegasi can't make magic items like unicorns or zebras, and there ain't nothing up there to build with except what was left from the past. And clouds. Clouds make for good Pegasi helms, they ain't so useful for making armored bullets.
I remembered how my hoof passed right through the Enclave terminal interface.
The few mountains that rise above the clouds have either been stripped of their resources or are homes for nasty things that the Enclave would rather not piss off.
Like Spike.
The Enclave invaded the Griffin skies a few generations ago just to get at their mountains.
Calamity nodded to Reggie, who took a long drag on her cigarette and spat a curse at the sky.
When the war ended,
Calamity added,
the Pegasi had about 50 raptors, only 4 Thunderheads and no ability to make more. Including the 4 raptors that you took down with the Bellfire bomb and the one downed near Stalingrad, the Enclave has lost a dozen of their warships in under a week. More than they've lost in 200 years. And 4 of them were taken out by Ditzidu's toxic rainbow.
Calamity gave me a meaningful stare.
The Enclave must be pissing themselves right now.
I wish he hadn't used that particular phrase. Good, I said firmly, then asked, what does it have to do with the Wonderbolts? Calamity rolled his eyes.
Ain't it obvious, little pup? I told ya, the Enclave keeps all Pegasi who can do the sonic rainbow real close.
Oh, now I got it. The Wonderbolts. Any Pegasus who proved capable of performing a sonic rainbow was drafted into the Enclave's celebrity hit squad. That meant that the ponies hunting us were all that good. I liked Calamity's plan even less. And when the Enclave saw what Ditzy did, I guessed, putting the pieces together, they pulled the Wonderbolts into... I searched for an appropriate phrase. Emergency tactical meetings calling on the expertise to try to get a handle on this new threat? Calamity nodded.
Something like that. They have no idea how many ghoul Pegasi live down here,
he stated, causing me to think back to the flock of zombie Pegasi we had run from in the Cloudsdale outskirts.
And if Ditzidu could do it, theoretically just about any sufficiently radiated ghoul Pegasi should be capable of pulling off a toxic rainbow.
Yes, the Enclave really must be pissing themselves.
Upshot is, I reckon we got a few days before the Wonderbolts are hot on our tails.
God was talking to Ditzidu when I entered the store. Kage and the bodyguard were next to them, huddled around a spool table, playing a game involving rectangles of hardened paper. My curiosity urged me to divert long enough to peek in on the game. Each griffin held a number of the colorfully marked papers in their talons, and there were 6 more piles of papers face up on the table as well as 2 face down that they seemed to be drawing new papers from as they played. I would have watched longer, trying to understand the rules, but I didn't want to leave Watcher waiting. And besides, the game was clearly not for ponies. A unicorn might be able to hold those little papers fanned like that, but why learn a game you couldn't play with your Pegasi or Earth pony friends? Trotting up to God, who was nodding at something Ditzidu had written on her chalkboard, I interrupted as politely as I could. Ditzidu stepped back, nodding with a smile. God, there's something I need from you. I wanted to ask this as a favor, but the little pony in my head reminded me that favors weren't how God worked. God respected the contract. The gruff female griffin looked down at me with her one good eye, her expression unreadable. Sorry, kid, but you ain't my type. Bah, ugh. She thought I was... But then what else would she think after her daughter caught me looking at her? It's nothing like that, I stomped, recovering. Part of me wanted to bury myself and hide until I drowned in my own embarrassment. But this was too important, and besides I wasn't interested in her like that. I mean, sure, but I had Homage. And it was very likely I wasn't going to be around much longer. The last damn thing I was going to do in my remaining days here was cheat on Homage. The little mare in my head whimpered, I'm not? Not helping. Gordina raised an eyebrow. Well, of course not, I mentally hissed at my little pony. She's a griffin, with children, which highly suggested that she was interested in other griffins, male ones. And why was I even having this discussion with myself? Trying to get this back on track, I asserted, You have a contract to protect this town, right? Yes, the griffin said slowly, her face shifting into the stern expression of negotiation. But you didn't protect it, Ditzidu here did. Yes, she said again, even more slowly. And now there's a really good chance that the Enclave will come after her, and they'll probably wipe out the town to get at her if she is here. I could see Ditzidu's eyes widen. God hadn't been in Friendship City, but Ditzidu had seen the horrible lengths the Enclave would go to. God was looking at Ditzidu and frowning. She's had Gilgamesh as her personal bodyguard, but I take it you think I need to do more. I detailed what I wanted God to do. About halfway through my explanation, her good eye widened and she turned to me in shock. Are you insane? Apparently all the ponies in this town were crazy, including me. I was with you until the Dragon Cave, but I think asking me and my griffins to fly Ditzy here above the clouds and into the home of a dragon is stretching the contract I have with this town a mite bit too far. The dragon won't be hostile. Not to you, I promise. You do you? She fixed me with an appraising look. Your relationship with dragons seems to have changed since last I saw. This dragon doesn't eat ponies, I asserted. Or griffins. At least I was pretty sure Spike didn't eat griffins. What did Spike eat anyway? Just gems? Well, if you want me to liberally interpret the contract to include dragon visiting, God suggested, then maybe you can see a way to liberally interpret what we're getting paid. I was going to be broke after this, but it was worth it to keep Ditsy-Doo safe. And Silverbell. Okay, but you'll have to take both of them, Ditsy and her daughter, as soon as... Where's Silverbell anyway? Shouldn't she be back by now? I looked to Ditsy-Doo. Some pony should be watching that filly. The thought struck me swiftly. Where's Zenith? Worry became panic when Stiletto burst in, looking nastily smug. Hey, Derpy, that Ditsy filly of yours is up at Railroad Station. Needs you something bad. The bodyguard, Gilgamesh, was fast. Ditsy-Doo was faster. She'd flown out the door, leaving paper rectangles swirling through the air from her backwash even before my mind could process what the shattered hoof raider had said. Shooting Stiletto a nasty look and a, "Then why aren't you helping?" I raced into the night's storm after her. Gilgamesh was in front of me, Calamity behind. I heard Gardena ordering Kage to watch the store just before the door banged closed behind me. Yep, this was what wet felt like. I thought I was wet a few minutes ago. Wow, was I wrong. The rain was heavier now, falling in sheets that drenched me to the bone before I'd gotten into the street. But I didn't care. All I cared about was Silverbell. The pony in my head was biting her hoofs, insisting that I should have gotten the two of them to safety sooner. Why did I have to fall asleep? My hoofs splashed in the river beneath me. Calamity and Gilgamesh were faster, reaching the station house that had been claimed by Neopalooza's mayor/sheriff. Ditsy-Doo was already at the front door. The lights were out. Not good. I floated out little Macintosh, kicking on my eyes forward sparkle. I tried to call out to Ditsy-Doo to urge caution, but I was too late. The ghoul Pegasus spun in the air and bucked the door open, revealing blackness inside. My EFS compass lit up with dozens of light just as Ditsy-Doo pivoted back and flew into the dark maw of the doorway. It was a trap. I lifted little Macintosh in front of me, galloping as fast as I could to catch up. Wait. None of the lights on my EFS compass were a hostile red. A flash flood of light poured out of Railroad Station as dozens of colorful Neopaloozians shouted in unison. Surprise! I nearly shot a balloon. A cake floated into view, surrounded by a caramel-colored field of magic, followed by a familiar yellow unicorn pony with an orange and beige striped mane. The cake was baked in the shape of a giant muffin, echoing the many muffins on the nearby table beneath a glittering banner. Thank you, Ditsy-Doo. Ditsy-Doo stood in the middle of the room, wide-eyed, stunned. Do you like it? Silverbell asked anxiously. It's a party! The filly seemed nervous. For you, she added. I could tell from her wide, glistening eyes, and by many of the decorations, that the little lavender filly had done most of the work on the surprise thank-you party. Probably planned it. There was still a touch of Pinky Bell in her, and at some level this must be triggering odd emotions in the young girl. Ditsy-Doo made those fears evaporate as she flew to Silverbell, scooping the filly up against her breast and lavishing her with kisses until the girl was crying with happiness. Soon every pony was enjoying the party. Hello, Crane, I said, turning to the yellow unicorn. I thought I saw your telekinesis out there yesterday morning. Crane grinned. Thanks for the catch.
Thank you, he insisted. Couldn't have done it without your help and that little filly's, he added, looking over at Silverbell, who was trying to regain her ability to stand after a dizzying round of hugging. That was the first magic that little girl managed since getting her horn back. I honestly think seeing Mummy there do that red boom is what did it. Somehow, be smart, I was certain he was right. We spent the next hour catching up, which mostly involved me regaling him with all the telekinetic tricks I'd managed in the past 2 months. To my delight, Crane was dully impressed with my creativity.
But it wasn't until I told him about telekinetically flying that I managed to surprise him with my telekinetic prowess.
"Damn, girl,"
he said, wide-eyed.
"That took me years of work to pull off."
I felt a little crestfallen that I hadn't managed something unique. But Crane wasn't considered the best telekinetic in the Equestrian wasteland for nothing. And at least my learning curve was faster.
"How far can you get? I can manage one lap on Neopalooza before my juice runs out."
"I don't really know," I admitted. I'd made it from the ground to Calamity's shack, but I'd never tested to see how much farther I could push it. I'm afraid that I'll burn out again if I push too hard trying to find out.
"You've been burning out?"
he asked. I nodded.
"Way you've been pushing yourself, I'm not surprised."
We both jumped as something in the room exploded in confetti.
"Good news is there's a remedy for that,"
Crane told me as he floated all the bits of confetti off the two of us, depositing them in a waste bin. A cure for burnout? He had my full attention.
"Sadly, the wasteland might not have it for much longer. Requires a few plants that only grew in the everfree forest. Reckon they're all burnt up now."
"Oh, well, crap."
"Might be willing to part with one or more bottles of it, though,"
Crane said sourly.
"For a favor."
Right. Should have seen that coming. Plus, Crane's last favor involved a stable full of chimeras. I'm a little busy being hunted right now, I admitted. If I live through this, I'll keep your offer in mind. Maybe the first time ever that I had turned down a distracting quest. But I really couldn't spare the time. Unless... This favor, is any pony in danger?
"Nope,"
said Crane. I felt a wash of relief.
"Least not that I know of."
Well, that was something at least.
"There's a farm out at the edge of the everfree forest near the Hope Solar Array, close enough to Everfree for the ground to be farmable."
A farm near Everfree? Maybe it was something in the air. Maybe the crazy was contagious.
"Sprung up out of nowhere last spring, no idea who built it. Seems like some ponies went through a lot of effort to then abandon the place. Or more likely got themselves slaughtered by something wandering out of the forest."
Crane shrugged. In the background I spotted Ditsy-Do enjoying a muffin. She had one ear cocked and I suspected she was listening in.
"We could sorely use the crops, especially now,"
Crane stated.
"But local folks have weird rumors about the farm. First pony who tried to move out that way came back to town a few times saying it's haunted. Then he stopped coming to town at all. That was a while ago. Could use a pair of eyes scooping the place out, letting us know if it's safe to move into."
He wiggled his eyebrows.
"Assuming you ain't afraid of the Hatter's horse."
I mulled it over. Tell you what, if I'm out that way, I'll poke around, see what I can find and let you know, I told him, adding, for the remedy, but my plate's pretty full right now. Ditsy-Do trotted over. She had scribbled a new message on one of the chalkboards hanging around her neck. Don't worry because they say the farm is haunted. No reason to avoid the place. Ghosts don't exist. Just landmines. I blinked. Landmines?
"Ditsy-Do's pet theory," Crane explained. "Given the bloody body parts and the places where the ground looked like it had exploded."
Meanwhile, Ditsy-Do was wiping off her chalkboard. A moment later she offered, Bring me any mines you find, please. I'll trade for caps and grenades. Yep, definitely contagious. Silverbell galloped up excitedly. Come on, Mommy! Xenophil started pin the tail of the pony! Wanna play? The blonde-maned filly started tugging Ditsy-Do away before the ghoul could answer. Wait, Zenith started a game? Then, on second thought, regaining orientation and maintaining accuracy while blinded did sound like an exercise the zebra would be familiar with. I perked my ears, taking a moment to look and listen to the party around me. There was music playing from an old record player similar to the one Omarsh had, only in far worse condition. The songs were happy and carefree. All the furniture in Railride's living room had been pushed back, and there were ponies dancing with each other. It felt like a touch of the sunlight had been captured and was alive in this room. Firelight was perched on Railride's hat rack. She was bobbing her head, letting out musical whistles as she stared at her colored and distorted reflections in a cluster of balloons. I suspected she'd gotten into the spiked punch. Spike? Crap. I still needed to tell him about God and Ditsy-Do. Excuse me, Crane, I said hastily. I'll be right back.
Take your time, the yellow pony claimed. I got something that needs doing.
As I galloped out the door, I passed Gardena. She was standing outside, listening to the party. I stopped, skidding a bit in the mud. "Are you okay?" She nodded. "You've got a deal. 500 bottle caps and I'll have those two snug away in a dragon's cave by tomorrow evening." She shook her head. "Hope you know what you're doing. Those two, they deserve a good life." I had entertained a fleeting worry that the party had upset her. It would have been easy to be angry over the flash of panic those ponies had caused. "How could I've ever doubted you?" a little voice in my head asked. "It could have happened to any of us," another answered. The little pony in my head started looking around for the source of the other voices. I shook my head to clear it of the strange thoughts. No, the truth was that seeing Ditsy-Do and Silverbell together had touched the Gruff Griffin commander and she'd stepped outside to think. "Thank you," I told her. I started to turn back towards where Watcher was waiting but halted again. "What is your type?" I found myself forced to ask. "Unattached," Gardena Grimfeathers told me bluntly. The answer brought a smile to my face. From a certain perspective, I supposed that having a mare friend was like a contract. God respected the contract, and couldn't respect some pony who didn't. "Come on!" Silverbell coaxed with big, bright eyes, trying to pull me away from my conversation with Candy. "Come and dance with me!" I looked at the adorable little filly being so earnest and adorable. How could I say no? I glanced up towards her mother, wondering how she managed. The wall-eyed ghoul was watching her daughter lovingly and gave me a sympathetic smile. Waving goodbye to Candy, who notably had been responsible for bringing the adult punch, I followed the little lavender filly out onto the dance floor. The party went late into the night. Exhausted from dancing, I found an empty table and plopped my tail down next to it, floating over a glass of adult punch. It had a peculiar and delicious berry flavor and shed just enough radiation to make my pip-bug click. I'd made the mistake of asking about it. Mudfruit punch tasted better when I didn't know what it was. Zenith joined me. "The little one has fallen asleep," she stated. "We have put her to bed upstairs in the mayor's room." Better that than taking her home in the rain, plus it kept her and Ditsy-Do close. The Gut Griffin is watching her. I wondered if Gilgamesh ever slept. From something I had overheard, I knew I wasn't the only pony in town to ask that. "How are you doing?" I asked. "I am not a mother," Zenith said. "I can be a guard, a protector, but nothing more. I envy them." "Maybe you can't be a mother," I said as I recalled how Zenith stayed to help the zebras of Glyphmark learn the arts of stealth. How she instructed them in making dash. "But you can be more than just a guard. You can be a teacher." Zenith didn't know what to say to that, so she drank her mudfruit punch and I drank mine. At the table nearby, a familiar trio of younger ponies were spending the party discussing what they should name their group. The olive pony was suggesting the Wasteland Rangers. "No, no," the amber mare said. "That would sound like we were trying to copy the Applejacks Rangers. We need something more original."
"I know," the olive-coated buck said, raising a hoof. "How about Ouroboros?"
"The what now?"
the amber mare asked, confused. "It's a snake eating its own tail," the buck explained.
Why would we want to call ourselves that?"
No, the buck clarified. "It's an old symbol about renewal, and we're trying to help Equestria renew itself, right?"
"You sure about that?" the khaki-colored buck asked. "No," the mare insisted, shaking her head. "No snakes of any kind. There's nothing heroic about snakes." I thought she had a point. What kind of group of friends would name themselves after snakes? Leaning over, I offered, "If you want something heroic, how about Crusaders?" I watched the young hero's eyes light up. "I happen to know the name has a pretty illustrious history. Not to mention they seem to come in threes." Oh yeah!" the mare exclaimed. "The Wasteland Crusaders!" I was smiling as I turned back to my drinks, the conversation at the other table having become more excited as the young heroes plotted how they were going to change Equestria. I still didn't know their names, although now I sort of did. Calamity joined me at my table, followed by Raggy, both smiling and chatting. Struck by a suspicion, I asked, "You two have met before, haven't you?"
"Oh, yep,"
Calamity told me as a pale blue unicorn mare trotted by, offering cake and muffins. I took a plate of cake and nibbled at it. Yep, muffin-flavored. "Calamity here built my guns," Reggie smirked proudly.
"Oh, yep, met her a couple of years ago. She and her brother were flying protecting the caravans between Neopalooza and the Republic,"
Calamity said again. Then assured me with a grin,
"Didn't know she was related to your feathered fantasy, though."
I moaned, my ears flattening and my cheeks turning red as Reggie didn't hold back her snickering. I was never going to hear the end of this, was I? "You're worse than velvet." I immediately regretted the reference, seeing the pain it brought. It was contagious. I found myself thinking of Velvet Remedy, and of Steel Hoofs, and how much I wish they were here, able to enjoy this party with us. Without them the party seemed... Reggie yanked our thoughts away from friends no longer with us by pulling out one of her pistols and setting it on the table. I'd never seen a design quite like it before. "Calamity, I took 2.223 rifles, cut them down and modified them into the most boss pair of pistols in the Equestrian wasteland." I gave an appreciative whistle, wondering how they stacked up against little Macintosh. "I'm hoping Calamity here can fix me up with some more quick loaders," Reggie added, pulling out a cigarette only for Calamity to hoofwife her to put it away. "Lost a few when the Enclave attacked Shattered Hoof." "What happened?" I asked, remembering DJ Ponsree's mention of the attack on the radio. "Lame-ass party if you can't even smoke," Reggie grumbled, then shrugged. "They attacked, we fought back, we kicked their metal tails to the moon. What's to know?" Seeing we weren't satisfied, she sighed. "Fine, apparently some pony high in the Enclave has got some brains," she admitted. "Couldn't enter the idea of sending their soldiers on strikes against raiders first. Sets the right first impression, paints the right picture of what the wasteland is all about, and those bucks and mares won't hesitate when they tell them to wipe out the town." "Not like previous encampments," the attacking Pegasus had said. "There are folks here, families." Calamity was staring despondently at his cake.
"Makes sense."
"Yeah," Reggie claimed. "And at the rate they're going, they're gonna wipe the wasteland clean of raiders by the end of the month." She grimaced. "Probably is. No pony told him that Shattered Hoof wasn't a raider stronghold anymore. Well, problem for them." The young griffin grinned broadly. "They didn't send in any of those warbirds, but they sent in a whole flock of troops. At least 3 dozen, and we wrecked them. All that fancy armor and firepower aren't worth a shit in the sky if you don't have the experience to back 'em up." I blinked. That was certainly a new take on the threat of the Enclave. But then the Talons were professional mercenaries, heavily armed and with years of wasteland experience. Reggie pushed herself away from the table. "Anyway, scene's getting stable and I promised Kaga I'd bring him some cake, so I'm bailin'." The griffin had walked about 2 yards away from us when she spun around, moved back and jabbed a sharp talon into our table. "Oh, and just so you know, wherever you're going next, Kaga and I are going with you." "What?" "No argument. I don't know what you all are up to now, but all of Equestria tends to benefit from your victories." Reggie looked us over, dropping her voice. "Mom ain't never gonna admit it, but she's damn thankful for what you all did out at Splendid Valley. The goddess, her plans for griffins weren't exactly pretty." No unity for griffins. Once all the ponies were her children, anything that could challenge them was on the chopping block. Half the reason Red Eye got so many of our kind working for him, why some of us like Stern are so loyal to him. Zenith was drinking punch from a bowl cup which clattered to the floor. "It's because I knew he was plotting against the goddess." Calamity, Zenith and I looked at each other. Reggie continued. "Why, my bro and I see it, you're the best hope this wasteland's got going for it, and you are 2 soldiers down, including your heavy gunner, just as things are getting their most dangerous. You need us." This was surprising to say the least, and not how Talons operated, or at least not how God did. "But we haven't hired you." The thought was immediately followed by, "What does your mother think?"
"You might change your mind when you hear what you're heading into."
"Don't much care," Reggie insisted. "We're hiring ourselves to do this, lest you lot think you can outrun us." "We will gladly take all the help we can get," Zenith stated, then looked to me. "Am I not right, little one?" I looked at Calamity again. Maybe, just maybe, we'd be able to survive his plan after all. In the cold drizzle of dawn, I saw the 4 dozen forms of black carapace armor rise up over the city gates and fly into town. For a moment I felt panic and rage. The Enclave was attacking again. But that notion fled as I noticed the shimmer of caramel-colored magic surrounding the suits of Enclave armor and realized there were no ponies inside. The heavy gate rumbled open and Crane entered Neopalooza. He was not alone. Walking just behind him was a haggard-looking charcoal unicorn, streaks of scarlet and gold in her white mane. She was wearing Rarity's battle dress and yellow medical boxes for saddlebags. Her. Velvet Remedy halted, eyes widening as she saw me. We stared at each other through the haze of rain between us, a muddy river of a street stretching between us. She flinched back as I broke into a gallop. There was pain between us, but the emotional hurting was eclipsed by the hope I felt seeing her again. She tried to backpedal, but I had her in a hug before she could escape. "You're here?" she asked meekly. "Of course you're here." "Goddesses, we've missed you," I told her, not letting her go. "Please tell me you're back." I came to help," she said hesitantly. "I was visiting Steelhoofs and I saw the explosion."
"She got here late last night," Crane told me. "Been helping tend to the Pegasus too wounded to fly back home."
Of course she was. Velvet Remedy didn't ask if they were the good guys and who were the bad guys. She stopped to help the first hurting ponies she came across, didn't matter who they were. I hoped her kindness to the enemy left a lasting impression on them.
"I've been collecting their armor,"
Crane said, motioning upwards with his horn.
"Reckon it's a gift for Ditsy-Do, help repay what the town owes her."
I found myself loving Crane just a little bit right then.
"She's the one who took him down, after all."
Sensing an opportunity to change the subject, Velvet Remedy pointed a hoof at Crane. "This one's been claiming he's the best telekinetic in the wasteland," she said indignantly. "Obviously he hasn't met you." Crane and I exchanged looks. He chuckled. I gave him a respectful little bow, which he returned. "Or I was wrong, as usual." Velvet sighed, watching us. "Crane was my teacher," I explained. "Taught me how to unlock my telekinetic potential." Goddesses, that sounded lame. I blamed it on reading too many Sotmare's comics. Too much being one. Zenith whispered, "Where did she come from?" into my ear. "You must say, and now the student has become the master." I blinked, still processing Zenith's stealth appearance. "But why?" "It is expected," she whispered earnestly. I shook my mane. "By who?" The zebra didn't seem to have an answer. Crane walked on, floating the several dozen suits of scavenged armor towards absolutely everything. Zenith stepped back, seeming to fade into the weather. Silverbell was right. The zebra was kinda creepy. Velvet Remedy and I were alone in the rain. "Velvet, little Pip." "No, you go first." "Go ahead." We stopped trying to talk. The silence stretched awkwardly, scorched by the metallic hiss of rain against railway cars. "Little Pip, the things I said," Velvet began again. "They were so horrible." I took a deep breath. Her words still felt fresh, the pain cut deep. "But you weren't wrong," I told her. "And you tried to protect me. You were hurting so much and you still want me away, tried to get me to go," I said, realizing it was true. "It's my fault. I wouldn't leave. A mare who keeps poking a hornet's nest deserves to get stung." I wondered briefly if hornets still existed in Equestria. I had only seen them in books. Velvet Remedy shook her head, her strapped mane flapping wetly. "No, they were cruel and hypocritical." She shrugged off her medical boxes. The yellow boxes with their pink butterflies sank into the brown water. "I'm not worthy to follow Fluttershy, or to be your friend." I saw she was trembling. Fatigue and cold were certainly part of it. She must have galloped all the way from Fetlock. It was not a short journey. I put a hoof under her chin, looking into her eyes. It wasn't just the rain. She was crying. "But I want to," she continued. "I let the wasteland poison me, I know that. And I was right. Most ponies don't deserve to be helped, but that's not the reason to do it." I understood. I knew what it was like to have your faith in the goodness of ponies shaken. I felt it back in the pit. All those slaves I was trying to save cheering for my death. But unlike Velvet, that had never been the primary foundation of my urge to help. I know it's up to me. I want to be stronger than the wasteland, not let it poison me anymore. She faltered. But I'm not sure how. Homage was right.
The Equestrian wasteland is hard on heroes. No, it's brutal to them. It beats them down, it tears them apart. Eventually, every hero falls. Inevitably, every hero fails. The true mark of a hero is not that they never fail, never fall down. No, you know a true hero by what they do after they fall. By the way they pick themselves back up again, shake themselves off and throw themselves back into that good fight.
Velvet, Fluttershy would be proud of you. I started. I was unsure if I was saying the right thing, but it came from my heart. That had to count for something, right? She would want you by her side. It doesn't matter if you've stumbled. We've all done things we regret. You know I have. No pony is perfect. No pony is strong all the time. Do you think Applejack never lied? That Rarity was never greedy? Or that Pinkie Pie was never sad? Even Fluttershy had her Gardens of Canterlot. I give her a tender and hopefully uplifting smile. What matters is that you don't let your failures stop you. Velvet Remedy stared at me a long time, tears streaming down her eyes. There seemed to be a battle raging inside her. Thank you. I don't deserve friends like you, she said finally. Pulling her head away, she stared at the muddy water concealing her hoofs. After a pregnant pause, she let out a trembling whinny. It's my fault Steelhooves is dead. What? She looked up. I'm sorry. When you didn't come back, Steelhooves wanted to move. But I knew that clearing was where you would expect us to be. The others thought you were dead, but I refused to believe it. Her voice was slowly rising, touching on hysteria. I insisted that we stay close, believing that you did survive the Bellfire bomb. You were fighting to get to us. And we had to be there for you when you finally made it. Trembling, she wailed. I'm the reason it was so easy for the Hellhounds to find us. I made us keep camping so close to the same spot every day. Velvet Remedy broke down, sobbing. I wrapped my hoofs around her, holding her tight, understanding her pain, forgiving it and thanking her for what she had done because of why she had done it. Please tell me you'll come with us again, I whispered finally. We love you. We need you. Being without you is like walking with an open wound. I hugged her tightly. We miss you so much. Velvet began. She pushed back, breaking out of the hug, and stood staring at me, only falling raindrops between us. Little Pip. Swam! A rust and orange streak plowed into Velvet Remedy, knocking her out of sight as she was driven into the mud with Calamity on top of her. Velvet! Calamity cheered, nuzzling the exceptionally muddy mare. Good to see you too, she said weakly. Calamity stepped back, looking at his mud-covered love. Oops, he said, blushing. Let me help you. Before Velvet or I could say anything, Calamity had flown across the street, grabbing a rain barrel from in front of Railroad Station. Splash! Calamity dumped the barrel over Velvet Remedy. Velvet sighed. Well, at least I was already wet. And she wasn't muddy anymore. It's good to have you back, Calamity told her, never questioning that she was. Velvet Remedy splashed a hoof timidly. If you'll have me. Who's been a silly pony? Calamity chided. Velvet looked up at him. I want to be back. I want to help. Her voice was shy of pleading. Calamity lowered his muzzle into the muddy water and pulled out her medical boxes, putting them back over her. I watched as she thanked him, and he teasingly threatened to kiss her with his muddy muzzle. It is like things are finally going right again, is it not? Zenith asked, having ninjaed up beside me. I nodded. The rain was beginning to stop. Suddenly, looking at Velvet Remedy and Calamity, I knew. The very last of the pieces fell into place. Kindness and loyalty. Was there ever any doubt? The heavy black thunderclouds had shifted to a lighter grey, but were still heavy with rain as the Sky Bandit approached the shattered ruins of Manhattan. Calamity was pulling the passenger wagon. Our 2 Griffin escorts flanked us. "Ever considered mounting a magical energy turret on top of that thing?" Raggy called up to Calamity, eyeing the Sky Bandit's wreck where Steelhoofs had stood in past battles. Calamity wasn't quick to answer. Like me, I think he felt that mounting a weapon would be too much like we were replacing Steelhoofs. It was a silly and impractical response, the sort that Calamity had always dismissed in the past, being the first to scavenge stables and the corpses of Steel Rangers. But this was different. This was Steelhoofs.
"Well,"
he finally said.
"I think Steelhoofs was wanted that way. Want us to protect ourselves."
He kept flying straight.
"Just ain't had the time."
Kage flew close on the other side, talking to Velvet Remedy. "So, you follow the pony who all the medical supply boxes are made to look like?" "Yes," Velvet Remedy stated, beginning to get her hoofs back under her. "Her name is Fluttershy and she was the best pony." Kage considered that. "But you said that he was the one who created the mega spells?" Velvet Remedy had been surprisingly forthcoming with that bit of information. A reaction, I suspected, to our attempts to keep it a secret. "Which caused the apocalypse," Kage added. "So, you are a follower of the apocalypse?" Velvet Remedy needed only a heartbeat to answer. "If that is the name ponies want to use for anyone who aspires to the kindness of Fluttershy, then I will own that title, without reservation." Suddenly Calamity dipped low, flying just above the rubble of the city streets. Our Griffin shadows took a moment to change direction, swooping in towards us as Calamity brought the Sky Bandit to a rapid halt, pulling us into the cover of a hollowed-out radio print store. "What's wrong?" I asked, leaping out of the passenger wagon as Calamity kicked the quick release on his harness. "Did you not see it?" Zenith asked, her exotic voice seeming incredulous. I didn't have to wait long to know what she meant. About 10 minutes later, as we crouched in the cover of a broken sales bench, the pale grey light from the clouds was blotted out by the massive form of a black, anvil-shaped enclave mobile fortress. 4 great thunderclouds spanned out from it, 2 on each side. The ruined Manhattan streets was rendered in stark black and white as massive bolts of lightning arced between them. Attached to each storm cloud was a raptor. On each raptor, one of the clouds holding it aloft had merged into one of the flying fortress's broiling thunderclouds. The undercarriage of the massive ship bristled with weapon turrets. I could make out several large doors capable of dropping war chariots or bombers or troops by the scores. "What the hell?" Couldn't we, just once, get a break? "We got a sonic red boom," the little pony in my head reminded me. "What more do you want?" Even Firelight let out a low whistle.
"That's a glorious dawn,"
Calamity said in soft awe as the huge ship passed over the Manhattan ruins. Noticing that we were all staring at him, Calamity coughed.
"Thunderhead-class mobile siege platform,"
he explained. "You said the Enclave only had 4 of those," I pointed out, hoping I didn't sound accusatory.
"Yup, and 2 of them are permanently assigned. One's at Navarro and the other's is the home of the High Council."
I did the math. Both Calamity and Pride had referred to an Enclave regiment as 4 raptors and accompanying troops, the amount that could be carried and deployed by a Thunderhead. A full regiment had descended on Marypony just before the bomb went off, bringing a member of the High Council with them. Probably the regiment attached to the High Council's own personal Thunderhead. Hundreds of ponies, Commander Winter had said. I felt a little sick.
"If they're coming in Thunderheads to Operation Cauterize, that means they're getting ready for the big offensive,"
Calamity warned.
"They've lost too much too quickly. They need big victories fast, or their whole invasion falls apart, and a whole lot of Enclave leaders will be losing their positions in the next election. They can't play around with the little targets anymore."
"Explains why they haven't amassed another assault on Neopalooza," Kage reckoned. "Or Shattered Hoof." "Where do you think they are headed?" Zenith asked as the shadow finally passed, allowing daylight, such as it was, back into the streets. "By the vector, I'd say they're aiming for Philadelphia," Reggie suggested. "Assuming they don't plan to park that thing over 10 Pony Tower." "Fuck! Damn it, damn it, damn it!" "Calamity," I blurted anxiously. "Remember I told you that we can make this all mean something? Make all the loss count? Make this the start of something better?" Calamity stared at me with an expression that told me he was still holding me to that promise. The others just stared. "Well, I've got a plan. I know how to do it," I began. The griffins looked anxious and doubtful, Zenith looked reserved, and Velvet Remedy's face bore an expression of concern. But Calamity's eyes lit up with hope, a smile on his face. Then the smile faltered as he tentatively asked,
"What about my plan?"
"Your plan comes first," I reassured him. My friend looked immediately relieved. "But this new offensive throws a major wrench in mine. I need to know what the Enclave's timetable is." Calamity nodded. He clapped his hoof against his forehead, thinking.
"Okay, we haven't seen the Thunderheads before, so until now they must have been using someplace groundside as a communication center. Someplace to correlate data from all the scattered forces and relay commands."
I clapped my forehoofs together. "Brilliant! We'll hit the communication center and get a hold of their timeline."
"Just what I was thinking."
Calamity pondered the matter a moment longer.
"Have to be someplace pretty high up. I reckon that's what they were using Tenpenny Tower for before they got kicked out. They'd have a fallback position."
I remembered how far Blackwing's little broadcaster had been able to reach. The talents had been trapped in the best possible place for broadcasting. Horseshoe Tower! I was sure of it. "You have a plan." Velvet Remedy leaned out the front window of the Sky Bandit, talking to Calamity. "You." Calamity nickered as he guided the Sky Bandit in for a landing on the rooftop of Tenpenny Tower. I let out a heavy sigh as his hoofs touched down. "I keep coming back," I muttered to myself. "But Homage is never here."
"Now don't you say it like that."
Calamity shot back at Velvet as he checked his landing and detached himself from the passenger wagon.
"You make it sound like doom on a stick."
"And your plan is why we're here?" Velvet inquired.
"Yep. Need your friend Lifebloom's help."
Calamity admitted freely. I could see Velvet Remedy cringe as he jumped to the obvious and sadly correct conclusion. "You're doing something with your memories, aren't you?" Calamity didn't even look sheepish as he nodded. Hell, he looked proud of the idea.
"Yep."
"You're not going to forget me, are you?" That struck him. Calamity stumbled a bit.
Hell no,"
he insisted.
"Lil Pip says that Lifebloom can take memories without, taking them away."
He looked to me worriedly.
"That's right, ain't it, Little Pip?"
"Yes, Lifebloom can record memories as well as remove them." Velvet Remedy looked slightly relieved, but not much. "And collecting your memories is going to help us defeat the fastest, deadliest hunters the Enclave has? How?" Here it comes, the first horseshoe.
No,
Calamity puffed up, flapping his wings.
"We ain't gonna defeat the Wonderbolts, Velvet. We're going to save some."
The mottled brown Gentle Stallion who met us was not either of the unicorns I had been hoping to see, but he was familiar. He had been the one to inform me of the legal details surrounding Monterey Jack's execution, and he was a member of the Twilight Society. "A sonic rainboom," he was saying as he floated his glasses in front of him, polishing them with a pocket claws. "Or more precisely, a toxic rainboom. I believe that is what Resistance Radio is calling it, is it not?" "Resistance Radio?" "Oh." He raised an eyebrow as he slipped his glasses back onto his muzzle. "Yes, that is what the local gentry have taken to calling DJ Pound 3's little broadcast interruptions." Resistance Radio. I liked it. Go Homage. "So the Twilight Society will help us?" I asked, not for the first time. "Indeed," the Gentle Stallion lawyer asserted. "You and your motley band have more than proven both your intentions and your capacity for success. We would be honored to lend our hoofs to the fight." Wistfully he added, "A sonic rainboom in my lifetime." Calamity and I exchanged looks.
"Well, for now, what we need is Lifebloom, his expertise in memory magic, to be precise like."
The mottled brown unicorn nodded, not even looking at Calamity. "Absolutely. I will send for him right away. In the meantime, your usual suit is ready." "And," I added, "there's something else I needed to discuss with you at your earliest convenience. A legal matter." He turned, looking at me over the rim of his spectacles. "Indeed?" His earliest convenience turned out to be in less than an hour. I was a little surprised at the Twilight Society's sudden eagerness to lend their aid. I was probably being paranoid, but when things started working out in our favor, it tended to make me nervous. Meanwhile, we gathered in the quarters provided and waited for live bloom. "Swanky," Raggy whistled, looking over the fine sheets and marble floor tiles. She poked a talon at one of the posh pillows. Kage moved to check out the window, his eyes darting around like he was looking out for snipers.
"No kiddin'. If we had access to a place like this, I'd find it real hard to go back out into the wasteland and start mixing it up."
He drew the curtains close and nodded to his sister, who had taken up a strategic spot near the door.
I don't think we're gonna get attacked here,"
Calamity suggested. Our Griffin guards looked at each other as if Calamity was adorably naive. "Sparkling water?" Velvet Remedy offered to them, pulling from the complimentary stores in the bathroom. I winced, beginning to feel a little self-conscious. Velvet floated a chalice to each of them, then sipped from one of her own. "Well, hardly sparkling," she said, looking at it critically. "But it will do." This was Ten Pony Tower. When Velvet was here, she wanted to be pampered. "If Calamity's going to be a while having his brain molested, would you like to join me for a trip to the spa, little Pip?" "Yeah, you ponies have it hard," Kage mocked, rolling his eyes. I pondered that as I stripped out of my armor, heading for the bath. After all the bad, a trip to the spa would be heaven. But right now I just wanted to feel clean again. I'd forgotten what it felt like. As I dropped my reinforced barding to the floor, Velvet Remedy waved her horn at it, cleaning off the blood and grime. "Maybe if we have time, but I wanted to make use of that time by sneaking into Horseshoe Tower." I had been right about the Enclave's choice. We had spotted the Enclave's antenna array on the roof. The raptor circling overhead was kinda obvious too. I looked over my companions, new and familiar. "A stealth mission, in and out."
"Yeah, 'cause your stealth missions have a history of working out like that,"
Calamity snarked. Ignoring him, I continued. "I'll take Zenith and one of the Griffins to fly us there, and," I admitted, "to use cloud systems."
"I'll go,"
Kage offered. "All this fancy makes my feathers itch." Velvet trotted up to Calamity. "So this plan?" Calamity smiled, gazing into her eyes. "You want to turn the Wonderbolts, help them see they're on the wrong side, give them a chance to become heroes?"
"Yep,"
he said, his muzzle inches from hers. "You know, part of me says that's awesome." She gave him a simpering look, leaning so close they had to be feeling each other's breathing. "You have never been sexier." "That's it!" I jumped to my hoofs, floating my armor to me. "Time to go to do the thing in the place." I was out the door, my armor floating behind me, Kage and Zenith trailing my gallop before they started kissing. I stepped up to the ragged edge where sometime in the last 200 years the ceiling 2 floors above had given way, crashing down into the floor beneath, which collapsed, smashing through the floor beneath it. Rings of half rooms honeycombed the internal abscess. Motes of dust floated lazily in the gaping, empty space. It was just as I remembered it. As I looked down into the pit of rubble, the little pony in my head reminded me that somewhere down there was Pinkie Pie's last party, lost forever in an orb. Getting this far had been, damn. Why was my mind searching for a metaphor for easy that involved muffins? Ditsy-Do was rubbing off on me. No, not in that icky, flesh-rotting way. After a moment's internal debate, I went with easy. Zenith had her zebra stealth cloak, and I'd been using my MG stealth bag too. Kage was admittedly not as stealthy, but the two of us had been scouting ahead. When things were clear, Zenith would toss back the hood of her cloak and let him know it was safe to move forward. Despite being an adolescent, Kage never appeared bored. He had the sort of level head to not be looking for a fight. Besides his razor-sharp claws, the Griffin was armed with hellhound claw knives and wing blades. The first Griffin I had seen, the one who helped attack the train, had been armed with those. I'd seen them slice the head of a pony, but I worried that they would be ineffective against Pegasi in magically powered armor. Multicolored light spread across the void, striking parts of the broken ceiling as well as the desks that had been hanging precariously over the drop. The desk melted into goo as it dripped down into the rubble below. Okay, that was new. Diving for cover, I kicked up my ice-forward sparkle. We were in almost the same spot that 3 Alicons had stood the last time I was here, and across from us, almost in the same place I had been, an Enclave trooper was firing across at us with a multi-gem heavy infantry battle saddle. I pulled out Little Macintosh, locking onto the attacking pony with SATs, but had to dive away as the spray of his weapon melted my cover. 2 more Pegasi launched themselves across the gap from another floor. The trooper was laying suppressive fire while they flanked us. The first Enclave guard came up behind us through an office to our right. Kage moved to block his path, sweeping at the armored pony with his wing blades. The attack proved my fears both valid and unnecessary. The wing blades had sparked harmlessly off the Pegasus's armor just before Kage sent his Hellhound Claws knives plunging into the pony's throat. Even as the first guard fell, several beams of light struck Kage in the back. His Talon armor took the brunt of it, but one shot speared his right wing. The young griffin collapsed with a grunt, his eyes closed tight against tears. The second guard had landed on the floor above us. I heard the clank, clank, clank as she dropped grenades down a fissure in our ceiling. I'd had plenty of experience dealing with grenades. Back up they went. Maybe not my brightest idea, I realized, as the explosions not only killed the Pegasus above us, but sent the ceiling crashing down on our heads. My magic imploded as the room above us fell on me. Something heavy and searingly hot shoved me to the floor. Pain sprouted from my hind legs. I was pinned underneath jagged floor bars and the melted remains of a filing cabinet. Kage had taken cover in the doorway. I had lost track of Zenith. Fortunately, I was still invisible as the trooper across from us started filling our room with magical energy. The debris was ablative cover at best. I whipped my head around, desperately looking for where Little Macintosh had fallen. The spray of rainbow light stopped as the trooper reloaded. My revolver dropped to the floor next to me, a gift from an invisible zebra. I magically snatched it up and locked my targeting spell onto the Pegasus again. Blam, 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 blam!
Section 12 clear.
The Pegasus barked through my ear bloom.
Course rising in 10 minutes.
With the Thunderheads in play, this place had become redundant. The Enclave had already been clearing out when we arrived. The Raptor above hadn't been here for protection. We had 7 minutes before the Raptor opened fire, eradicating Horseshoe Tower.
Section 13 clear.
Another voice replied. My stealth bug was drained, but we were almost at the end. The last room before the roof was a 2-level executive bar and lounge. That was where they had their equipment set up. The good news was that our infiltration sped up their evacuation. They were no longer trying to pull out all their equipment, just their personnel. They would let the Raptor's massive guns take care of the rest.
Section 14 clear.
The first voice responded.
Course rising in 9 minutes.
The bad news was that the room would be a killing zone. All the soldiers left in the building were either on the roof or inside that lounge. I made sure Little Macintosh was loaded with armor-piercing bullets. Calamity had bought up all the ammo for Little Macintosh that Ditsy-Do had, but already I was almost out of armor-piercing rounds again. Part of me hated the Enclave for using magically energy weapons. The ammo crates never had anything I could use. I nodded to my 2 companions. Here we go. I telekinetically threw the doors open, my targeting spell locking onto each soldier as I saw them. An Enclave mainframe dominated the room. Cables snaked off of it, crawling into the backsides of the cloud interface terminals that sat glowing on the surrounding cocktail tables. The room was cold. A row of windows lined the right wall opposite the bar on the left. A couple were still intact, but most had been boarded up. Poorly. Enclave infantry were standing guard both on this floor and along the balcony above. Grey-clad officers and technician ponies in yellow dresses darted about, rarely landing. Most were headed for the stairs. 2 Enclave soldiers stood ready just inside the door. They were the first to react. I was faster. The first went down. The third shot killed the other door guard, the fourth bullet burying itself into a corpse. 2 shots in the head of each opponent. 2 in case one missed or just failed to kill. 2 shots and move on to the next. Leave any pony still standing for Kage and Zenith. One of the Enclave infantry on the balcony fired a missile at us. I dove for cover behind the bar. Kage flopped over the bar next to me, half jumping, half propelled by the explosion. Zenith, goopy-hoofed, charged across the ceiling. The explosion had blown her hood back and she was bleeding from small shrapnel wounds. Several Enclave soldiers opened fire, blasting apart the ceiling with a prismatic light show. Ancient crystal chandeliers came crashing to the floor with an almost melodic tinkling. Zenith managed to dodge them all, leaping from the ceiling to the balcony railing. Her forehoofs planted on the railing as she spun, driving bucking hoofs into the throat of the infantry pony as he reloaded and tried to aim. I could hear his armor crush into his windpipe. The infantry Pegasus pulled the trigger as he collapsed, the missile firing wild, striking the faded painting of a mare in a sultry position which hung above the far side of the lounge. The explosion blew out what was left of the windows. A damp, early evening wind blew in from outside, clearing the smoke. Reload. My targeting spell dropped only for me to bring it back up immediately, squeezing just a little more out of it. Another pony with a multi-gem weapon set a rainbow of light spraying over the bar and tearing into the liquor bottles racked behind us. Most of the bottles were empty, but the racks behind us hissed and exploded as a magical light passed through several still full ones, boiling the liquid inside. I let out a scream as I was bathed in alcoholic steam. Kage yelled, leaping the bar and trying to charge the attacker before he could reload, his injured wing keeping him from flying. I tried to give him cover, targeting another infantry Pegasus who was aiming for Kage with the twin magically energy rifles of his armor. One of those shots missed. The other struck home but failed to penetrate enough to kill the enemy. The Enclave soldier Kage was charging was just a little too fast. She had finished reloading and opened fire point blank into the Griffin's chest. It didn't save her. Kage's blades slashed deeply through her chest, cutting her heart even as his talon armor dissolved. The Griffin fell back, smoke rising from a gaping wound in his breast. I stared in horror as the light went out of his eyes. No, damn it, no! With a loud crack, a black-armored body toppled over the balcony, bucked through the railing by Zenith. I looked up for her, but she was invisible again.
Card rising in 8 minutes.
The Pegasus I had wounded had taken refuge behind the mainframe. I could see his shadow as he downed a healing potion. At the same time, another soldier flew across the room, landing behind one of the columns that supported the balcony along the near wall. A third knocked over a table and hid behind it, shoving it forward through the room, trying to get closer to me. She yelped as the table caught on one of the cables and flipped, exposing her. The battle raged on. The last Pegasus, a grey stallion with a flowing black mane and tail, held up a hoof in surrender. He was neither a technician nor a soldier. He wore a light grey officer's uniform that went smartly with his coat. The only officer to stay behind, making sure other officers and the technician ponies got out safely while the Enclave's troops tried to kill us. Did kill one of us, I thought heavily. I'd led God's son to his death. I didn't know how I was going to break the news to his sister. I'd never be able to face Gardiner again, but right now I didn't blame myself. I blamed the Enclave.
"Give me one reason not to shoot you,"
I growled.
"Make it good, because I really want to."
"Well, I see it," the Pegasus said, smiling annoyingly.
"Y'all can kill me or y'all can win."
Evac complete. Moving off.
The voice in my earbloom claimed.
Card rising in 5 minutes.
"What do you mean?"
I asked, leveling a little Macintosh at the Enclave officer's face. I floated both of Kage's blades near his neck. I had my targeting spell locked on for good measure.
"So we've got still one officer inside,"
another Pegasus said over the military channel.
"Card rising in 5 minutes,"
was a cold response.
"Well, I reckon y'all didn't come all this way just 'cause you like being shot at,"
the officer reasoned.
"I'm guessing what y'all came for is in that mainframe. But now you only got about 4 minutes left to get your tails out of this building, and you're down the only person you had who could have accessed it."
Fuck. Celestia Fury hemorrhoids of solar flaring death. Kage died for nothing.
"So I'll make ya a deal,"
the officer said.
"Y'all let me go and I'll download what you need into that pip-buck what the fuck you got there."
"And why would you betray the Enclave?" Zenith asked. "Why would you help us?"
"Well, 2 reasons,"
the Pegasus said, still smiling but with an earnest tone in his voice. 1, 'cause you folk are Calamity's friends. I love my little brother and I ain't happy to see his name on the kill list. 2, 'cause I reckon without any flyers with ya, chances are 3 minutes won't be enough for ya to get out anyway. I would have stopped to think about that to process what he said, but the voice in my earbloom announced,
Card rising in 4 minutes.
Okay, I agreed, motioning for the Pegasus to get to work. I chose to believe him, not because of what he said about Calamity, but because he hadn't lied about how much time we had. You winch here, right? I asked as the stallion moved to the nearest terminal. Calamity had said his oldest brother was a master of communications technologies. You was the chief communications officer here? I guessed. I up to both, he said, and he worked. I caught the password. Restricted. Now what exactly do y'all want? 'Cause I could give you everything, but that would take longer than you got. I need to know what the Enclave is doing next and when, I answered, the gears in my head spinning. What's the chance that 2 of Calamity's brothers would be down here? I pondered as he started the download.
Card rising in 3 minutes.
We were cutting it insanely close. I'd say 100%, Windcheer said with a smile, backing away from the terminal. They put Autumn Leaf in charge of Operation Cauterize, and he made sure both his other brothers were part of the show. The grey Pegasus chuckled. Hell, that was the only way Pride was ever gonna see anything outside Navarro. I groaned, hanging my head in pain. One of Calamity's brothers was commanding this entire damn massacre. I'll be going now, Windcheer said. But you'll pass my love on to Calamity, won't ya? Your love? Zenith asked. Did you not all treat him horribly? Windcheer shrugged. We were kids. Zenith stomped. Not an excuse. Look, Pride did it 'cause he was a bastard, and worse, an incompetent bastard. Unlike Calamity, he was nothing but a disappointment to Dad. He did it 'cause Autumn Leaf did it, and he hoped copying Autumn Leaf would get him some respect from us. Windcheer added, It didn't. The voice in my earbloom spoke again.
Card rising in 2 minutes.
As for Autumn Leaf and myself, we remembered what Dad was like before Mom died. He said only half apologetically. He was better before that, not always a drill sergeant. We'd lost our mom, we'd lost the best part of our dad. We were hurting. And Calamity was there. Windcheer shrugged again, then flew off towards one of the open windows. The download completed. I turned to Zenith, wrapping her first in my magic, then myself. I galloped for the window.
Card rising in 1 minute.
My earbloom informed me as I leapt out the shattered window and into the cold open air. The raptor had backed off far enough that I doubted they could see us. The barrels of their huge magical energy cannons were glowing like miniature suns as they charged up to fire. The sky split, the air tearing apart as multiple beams of orange-white plasma tore into Horseshoe Tower. Every remaining window exploded outwards, shards of glass followed by gouts of flame. I turned away from the sight, focusing completely on moving us away from the doomed skyscraper. Sweat was already pouring down my forehead. I was going to see just how far I could fly after all. When we arrived back at Ten Pony Tower, it was by way of the Celestia line, and Zenith was carrying me on her back. I was feeling rather proud of myself. I'd gotten us a little over a mile before strain and exhaustion forced me to put us down in one of the 4-star stations. Proud and oh so very, very tired. I was ready to take Velvet Remedy up on that trip to the spa now. Only it was very late, the spa would be closed, and I had to face Regina Grimfeathers. I poured over the data Windcheer had given us. The stallion had been true to his word. We got what I had asked for and no more. The Enclave was focusing now on what it considered the 2 biggest threats. First and foremost was Red-Eye. They had tracked him to the cathedral. They had a regiment patrolling the borders of the Everfree Forest, trying to make sure he didn't escape. In 2 days' time, the Overcast, Colonel Autumn Leaf's command Thunderhead, was going to move in with a 2nd full regiment and wipe the cathedral off the face of Equestria. The Glorious Dawn was being dispatched to a rendezvous with the bulk of the Enclave's forces, amassing for an attack on Philadelphia. And by attack they meant cleansing. Slavers, slaves, rangers, scavengers. They were going to kill them all and reduce the factories that Red-Eye had rebuilt to rubble for good measure. And they could. I'd just seen them turn Horseshoe Tower into a mound of rubble and slag. I couldn't let that happen. My blood ran cold as I saw the Enclave's second target, Homage. Somehow my mare friend had rated as the second biggest threat to the Enclave. Attached to this assessment was a video file. I was trembling as I pulled it open, but I don't know if it was from fear or rage. The video was from the security camera of a raptor. I watched as Homage brought down the shattered hoof-ridged tower. The explosion from the Star Blaster had disintegrated everything it touched. It had eaten the tower's base. They didn't know she could only do that once. They only knew that she did it. And that made her even more terrifying than Ditsy Do. Almost as much as Red-Eye and all his armies. I realized that, strangely, I wasn't frightened or mad anymore. I was proud. Proud of my wonderful, dangerous Homage. And they had no idea what to do about it. Sending more forces after her risked, in their minds, further retaliation. And that could mean the destruction of another tower. Maybe more. So instead they were sitting on their hoofs. Well, not exactly. They had given lethal sanction to the one group they thought could actually hunt down and kill Homage without her being able to strike back. The Wonderbolts. Calamity had been right. The Wonderbolts had been drawn into meetings. But those were due to end in about 6 hours. After that, our hunters had given 32 hours to complete their current assignment. Then they were ordered to focus their efforts on murdering my mare friend. 32 hours. I prayed they would do what I so desperately wanted to. Sleep. After over 20 hours of meetings, what pony wouldn't want to catch some sleep, making sure they were fresh and revived before they went hunting other ponies down and killing them? Zenith nudged open the door to our suite and deposited me on the floor with an undignified thump. I yelped as I landed on my scalded back. Calamity trotted over, looking down at me.
How'd it go?
I was surprised that he was still in the room. Or was it back in the room? Live Bloom walked up next to him as Velvet gave the gasp we were all expecting and dashed to tend to our wounds, starting with a bloody zebra.
"Wintier sends his love,"
I answered. I winced as a female voice called out from the corner.
"Where's Kage?"
Regina Grimfeather stared down at her twin brother's knives, then carefully slid them into her belt.
"Thank you for bringing these back." "Regina, I'm so sorry."
"There is nobody," Zenith informed her. "The Enclave—"
"Shut it about the bloody Enclave!"
the Griffin roared. The room was shocked quiet. Calamity finally broke the silence.
"What now?"
Regina Grimfeather scowled at him.
"What do you mean, what now?"
she asked gruffly.
"The job ain't over yet, is it?"
"You're staying?" Velvet gaped.
"Grimfeathers don't turn tail and run when it gets nasty,"
she spat. The young Griffin woman laid down. Her eyes were moist, but she had yet to shed a tear. Almost under her breath she added,
"And I sure as hell ain't going back to tell gods that I quit the jobs that killed Kage."
Velvet floated a healing potion to me as she magically stripped off my armor and began inspecting me for wounds. It was as if she had never left.
"So,"
Raggy said finally,
"what now?"
Live Bloom spoke up. "Now I gather together what I need for a trip."
"Say what now?"
The unicorn with the red and scarlet mane looked at us. Storing a copy of so many of Calamity's memory was actually the easy part, but the other request— He turned to Calamity. "I'm sorry, but the Twilight Society simply doesn't have 5 recollectors to give you." I had been afraid of that. Calamity's plan was to divide up the Wonderbolts, incapacitate them through Zenith's paralyzing hoof and Velvet's anesthetic magic, and slap recollectors on them, feeding them his memories. Memories of how and why he left the Enclave. Memories of the good ponies down here, of his time with me and the good things we had done. And to trust in the better nature of ponies. The problem was, it takes as long to experience the memories in a black opal as it took for the person to live them. And Calamity wanted to feed several days' worth of memories into the Wonderbolts. Keeping them safe and hydrated was a big enough concern, but if we didn't have enough recollectors to trap them all at the same time— Fortunately, I have a better way, Lifebloom claimed. There's a memory spell, one created by Twilight Sparkle herself, which will allow me to cram all those memories into their heads in minutes. It won't be pleasant. The white unicorn shook his head. But it will work.
No offense, but have you ever been outside a 10-pony tower before?
Calamity asked.
It's rough out there.
Lifebloom tossed his mane. Yes, I'm a little familiar with the outdoors. This was a much bigger commitment for the Twilight Society than just some recollectors. Are you sure? The last person who went on a mission with me didn't come back. Regina shot a dark glower at Non-Pony in particular. You called on us to help, and you were right. Lifebloom gazed at me. This is us helping. Raggy stood up. Okay then, what are we waiting for? Well, Velvet Remedy said softly, some of us need to sleep. She did her best not to glance my way. I hadn't moved from where Zenith had dropped me. Not long though, I insisted, still not moving. Floor was good. Just give me a pillow. We need to be moving before the Wonderbolts are. Raggy looked at the ponies and Zebra around her. Firelight gave a tired little hoot, even though she had spent most of the trip napping against Velvet Remedy's flank. Fine, she groused. My eyelids were getting heavy, but I forced them to stay open. There was one more horseshoe hanging above us, waiting to drop. So, Lifebloom asked, where are you headed? We will need a place where the Wonderbolts won't be able to totally own us with their aerial superiority, Raggy pointed out. Velvet flicked back her styled mane. She'd obviously been to the spa while I was out. She looked perfect. Well, Manhattan had to have more stables than just number 29. Do you know of any that are vacant and just laying around?
No stables, Calamity interjected. Those things are death traps in case y'all ain't noticed. And even if the stable itself don't try to kill us, all the Wonderbolts would have to do is close the door and collapse the tunnel. Or do what little Pip did with Stable 24 and divert a river into it.
Velvet Remedy cringed, looking at me in surprise. They don't even need a river, Raggy added. These are Pegasi. They're really good at making it rain. She shook her head, looking at my Pegasus friend. Best rule underground out entirely. And here it drops, I thought. So we need some place that the Wonderbolts can't use their aerial skills against us, Lifebloom said slowly. And where we can get them split up, but that's outside.
Oh, yep,
Calamity said with conviction.
And I got the perfect place.
Look at it fall.
Everfree Forest.
The first golden rays of dawn were pouring across the horizon as the Sky Bandit leveled out, flying towards hope. Remind me why you let Calamity make plans, Zenith said. She had taken off her zebra stealth cloak and given it to Lifebloom. The bug would definitely have more need of it, and we couldn't risk the Wonderbolts taking out the one pony who could cast the memory spell. Or risk the forest taking him out, or the fire, or any of Red Eye's troops who were controlling the fires, or the Enclave patrols. The consensus was that we were indeed all going to die, but at least it would be an exciting death. Well, I'm proud of him, Velvet proclaimed. If we are going into the Everfree Forest, Zenith said, pulling an ancient and tattered book from her saddlebags, then there is something I must tell you. I looked at the book. The cover was very old leather, warped and cracked. On the front was a large zebra glyph and several smaller ones beneath. The last time I had seen glyphs like that, I was trying to read the black book. Where did you get this? I asked, both cautious and curious. From Zephyr, our zebra friend said. Once this belonged to my grandparents. They rescued it from the hut of Sakura, deep in the Everfree Forest. Zenith opened the book, pointing at strange glyphs. You wonder what has caused the Everfree Forest to grow so strange and dangerous, do you not? I nodded, remembering Calamity's assertion. The Everfree Forest had never been hit. There was no radiation, no taint. That's why Red Eye sought to turn it into farmland. Through this book I have come to learn the reason, Zenith said cryptically. And it's not a new one, but a very old one. And you're just telling us this now? I received this book while you were playing in the Canterlot ruins, and it took me some time to read it. Time I suspected that babysitting Silverbell had given her. And it was not easy to read. There were things I did not wish to understand. We all listened intently. Even Calamity's ears were swiveled so he could catch the conversation as best he could. Something flashed in the distance ahead. On the horizon was the ever-free forest, still green, still pouring smoke. I believe we may have been wrong about Princess Luna and Nightmare Moon, Zenith admitted, looking down at the book. The zebra was unwilling to meet the gaze of any of the ponies around her. They were not one and the same. Velvet cocked her head quizzically. Firelight let out a questioning coo. Before the boar, long before the wasteland, over 1,000 years ago a star fell to our world. And it fell in the ever-free forest, close to where the princesses lived. I knew this story. It had been told to me by Midnight Shower. The fallen star's influence warped and twisted everything around it, Zenith claimed. According to Sakura's writings, even a little exposure was enough to help Luna's inner darkness to take hold and manifest. Only the power of the elements of harmony were able to nullify what it had done to her. The zebra finally looked up. Forgive me for speaking what may seem ill of your goddess, but Celestia was never as strong as her sister. When things hurt too much, she would run away. I glared at Zenith. This had better be going somewhere. I wasn't happy with this sudden and unflattering analysis of the goddess Celestia. She stepped down from the throne in the middle of the war, Zenith reminded us. And this was not the first time Celestia abandoned something. When forced to banish her little sister to the moon, she fled their castle, leaving their home behind to rot in the ever-free forest. Okay, I could see that. And really, who could blame her? The memories that castle must have felt. It would be too painful for any pony. And she left the elements of harmony behind in the castle, Zenith said. Just laying there. Zenith stared down at the book, seeming to read from the glyphs. The elements of harmony, the most powerful of all known magics, were left on their pedestal, save one which was hidden, waiting for the spark to reveal it. And in the centuries that passed, the castle crumbled and fell. Moss and vines grew up around the pedestal of the elements, and they were forgotten, faded into legends and old mare's tales.
What in tarnation does that have all to do with Everfree Forest being all crazy?
Calamity called back impatiently.
Place didn't get so bad until after the war.
Zenith shook her head. No, Winged One, it was getting bad before then. The badness just took time to grow. And what caused the badness to grow? Velvet Remedy asked. What caused it to get so much worse, if not the war? It sounded like she was buying this. To me, it was all insane zebra logic. From reading this book, Zenith said, I have come to believe that the infection of the stars was being held at bay for 1,000 years. Even during that time the forest was bad, but it was not as bad as it could be because something in the heart of the forest was hindering it. The elements of harmony, even abandoned and dormant, were holding back the bad. And then they were removed. Again my eyes caught something glinting in the early rays of dawn. It was ahead of us, out near Everfree Forest. What is that?
That? Calamity repeated. The glow, you mean?
I nodded, then, realizing he couldn't see me, called out a yes.
That's a hope solar array. Only time of day those dishes big enough sunlight to shine is the crack of dawn.
He chuckled.
We'll be passing right over it before we head into Everfree, so y'all can get a good look.
I nodded again, this time to myself. I was thinking about something Calamity had said about the Enclave. Okay, everyone, listen up. We are planning to try to separate the Wonderbolts, but there's a good chance we could get split up ourselves. We need a fallback position.
You're thinking about the array? Calamity asked. It's close, but it's still quite a few miles from the forest's edge. Long way to go out in the open, especially if you're wounded.
Drat. Think. Okay, backup idea. I've got it. There's a farm right at the edge of the Everfree Forest. It supposedly got landmines or ghosts or something, so be careful. Possibly a bad idea, but at least it was a landmark. Go near, not in. It was either there or Fluttershy's cottage, and I really didn't want to take Velvet Remedy back there. The others quickly agreed. We continued to fly, making small talk as the Everfree Forest drew ominously closer. I had stopped staring out the window. I didn't really want to see the distance between us and the forest being eaten away. Looking in my companion's eyes, I could see everyone was feeling the same thing I was. A sense of wrongness and inexplicable dread, like our skin was too tight. I'd started feeling it the minute I started to smell the smoke. This was a bad plan. But the Wonderbolts were on the clock now. They had to come get us, and my pip-leg was drawing them right to me. With any luck, we shouldn't have to camp out in the forest for more than a few hours. I watched Life bloom. He looked out of place amongst us. Yet our whole plan rested on his memory spell. Something clicked in my head. I smacked my forehead with a hoof. "Let me guess," I said, catching the white unicorn's attention. "You watched my memory orbs first, then memory spelled them into the other ponies in the Twilight Society, didn't you?" And here I'd been so smug thinking I would be able to keep them effectively incapacitated for days. Life Bloom gave me a pompous smile. "Oh, absolutely." Then he frowned. Except for that last one. Memory Orb 8. I was quite convincing that it held nothing any of them would want to see. I started to thank him, but he added, "And I swiftly gouged it from my own memory to mitigate the trauma." Velvet Remedy snickered. I didn't know whether to be relieved or offended. "Oh?" Reggie perked up, flying closer. "And why is that?" It was the first thing she'd said all morning. Yay for it being about my sex life. "None of your business," Life Bloom replied sharply. The unicorn bug moved across the passenger wagon and sat next to me. In a soft whisper he confessed, "I mean no offense, Omage and I have been friends for a long time, and that's not the way I want to think of her."
"Attention passengers," Calamity called back. "If you look out your windows, you can see the Hope Solar Array on your right. And if you look out the front, you can see a real good look at the very forest. We'll be descending to 20 yards above tree level for next part of our trip."
I jumped up, shifting to the window. Below and to the right, half a dozen concrete towers rose out of the ground, 5 of them topped by giant bolts tiled inside with battered and weathered mirrors. A strange fixture rose up in the center of each dish, making them seem like little flowers, and the array like a giant artificial garden. One of the dishes had broken off its tower and toppled face down to the ground next to it, a large crack running up from where it first struck the ground. I floated out my binoculars for a closer look. A wasteland merchant had set up home and shop beneath the overturned dish.
"I suggest covering your muzzles. Air quality is likely to go downhill pretty darn quick."
The air grew thick, acrid, and hazy. Velvet Remedy passed me a scarf to wrap around my muzzle for protection. She had been thoughtful enough to purchase enough for everyone. The one she gave Zenith was striped with red and gold and simply looked ridiculous. We almost made it to the tree line when we heard the cracks of thunder behind us. Turning around, I saw 5 columns of black smoke crackling with lightning shooting up out of the Hope Solar Array. The Wonderbolts. Calamity yelled and began to flap his wings as hard as he could, pouring on the speed. I enveloped the Sky Bandit in my magic, lightening his load as much as possible. "They are bad hunters," Zenith complained. "They have no stealths. It is as if they want to be seen."
"They do,"
Raggy called, catching back up.
"If they wanted, they could have attacked us the moment we flew over that place. Or before."
"They're enjoying the chase," I suggested dourly.
"Or they're driving us into the Everfree Forest on purpose,"
Raggy called back. The haunted farm with all its exploded bits of dirt was passing below us now. Only they didn't look like the disruptions caused by detonated landmines to me. They looked like the work of hellhounds. I ran to the back window, staring down at the farm as we passed over. In the yard, partially hidden under a tarp, was an enclave antenna array. It looked just like the one on the rooftop in Old Olney. "Oh, fuck!" I looked back up. The streaks of electrified black smoke had taken a sharp turn and were headed straight for us, catching up fast. Trees rushed beneath us, obscuring the farm. We were over the forest now. Heat rippled up at us, the world becoming an oven. We were in Everfree. The unnatural sense of dread grew. It was like bugs walking along my bones. The miles between us and the Wonderbolts closed rapidly as more of the forest shot past beneath us. I could see the orange of flames burning across the ground between the trees and along the shores of a river turned grey with ash. What the hell? Something was seriously wrong with this picture. Calamity gave a shout as a cliffside suddenly rose up in front of us. He turned sharply upwards, the passenger wagon tilting steeply. We tumbled towards the back, falling towards the glassless back window in the forest below. Zenith splayed out her hoofs, catching the edges of the rear window as Life Bloom and I toppled against her. The jolt of panic caused my magic to implode. The sudden weight almost pulled Calamity out of the sky. One of the Wonderbolts fired a shot. A single shot from what sounded like an anti-machine rifle. A hole opened up in the roof of the Sky Bandit, matching one in the floor. I heard a strange pop. Calamity heard it too. With a scream of panic, he pulled us over the edge of the cliff, grassy ground appearing closely beneath us, before kicking the quick release on his harness with a shout of,
"Abandon wagon!"
Zenith pulled her legs in and dropped out of the back window, followed by Life Bloom and myself. Firelight shot out a side window as Velvet Remedy hauled herself out the door. Zenith hit the grass, rolling. I slammed into the forest floor with a graceless thud, small rocks and stiff plants lashing abrasions across my legs and under my chin as I skidded to a halt. If we hadn't been going mostly upwards, Velvet Remedy hadn't even hit the ground when the Sky Bandit exploded in a pyrotechnic eruption of wild magic. I stumbled to my hoofs, looking around for my friends. My mouth tasted like wet copper. My legs spasmed. I had bruised all along my stomach and left side, making it hard to breathe. The world canted, throwing me off balance. I fell back to the ground again. Scattered around us were burning hunks of twisted metal, the remains of the Sky Bandit. Seeing them drove a pang through my heart, like we had lost a dear pet or treasured heirloom. Zenith had landed nearby. She had lost her scarf, but looked otherwise none the worse for having fallen out of a passenger wagon just before the flying bomb lived up to its moniker. The zebra was on her hoofs and looking much more steady than I thought I would ever be again. Zenith strode over and helped pull me back to my hoofs. A moment later, Calamity swooped overhead. "Where are the others?" I called up to him.
"Clearing just ahead,"
he shouted down to me before zipping ahead. I stumbled forwards, my legs threatening to give out. My side protesting every step. Just my luck that we had two healers with us now and neither of them was with me. I just couldn't win. Zenith helped guide me forward, pushing through the foliage. The heat was oppressive, the smoke choked my lungs, but the fire hadn't made it to this height yet. I was again struck by the sense that something was seriously amiss. I paused, looking around, trying to put a hoof on what I was feeling. Nothing. "Ouch!" I whined as a leafy branch Zenith pushed aside came snapping back across my face. Pushing through the last of the underbrush, I ran into Velvet Remedy's backside. The impact sent me falling back onto my flanks, then all the way down as my forelegs gave out. I stared in front of me between Velvet Remedy's hoofs. A fiercely determined bunny rabbit stared back at me. The bunny was made of stone. Beyond the stone bunny, the grassy knoll rose up to where a massive weeping willow, twisted and ancient, rose above us. The rough bark of the tree was a strange, buttery yellow. Blue vines wrapped about its gnarled roots. Its drooping pink leaves swayed in a wind I couldn't feel. The tree was framed by the angry brown sky, choked with smoke. Beyond the tree, the hillside dropped back downwards into the fires of Everfree Forest, those flames pushed forward by the dark silhouettes of red-eyed griffins, their weapons pouring liquid fire across the ground. Footnote: Maximum level.